Today we're taking a quick look at our second part of a four-part series over the Civil Rights Movement that we are going to look at today, events in the late 1950s and one event in the early 1960s. Yesterday we briefly talked about the desegregation of public schools with the court case Brown versus Board of Education. There was the murder of a young boy, Emmett Till, in Mississippi, and the desegregating of buses in an event known as the Montgomery Bus Boycott. Today we are starting off with an issue that connects back to Topeka, Kansas, where if schools are desegregated, now we're going to see how states respond and react, and we're going to begin with the capital of Arkansas in the city of Little Rock. What happens is there are 9 African American students who are now, 2 years after the Supreme Court case, going to desegregate the local Central High School in what will become known as the Little Rock Nine. The Little Rock Nine are going to attend the first day of school, but the governor of Mississippi at the time, Arkansas, is going to try and refuse their admittance. He will use his power of the local National Guard of the state to block and prohibit them from entering. And it creates this question between state and federal power. Who can do what actions? If there is a national law, must states at the local level follow those orders, or can they refuse them and practice their own policies? Eisenhower and the federal government are going to challenge the state's power, and Eisenhower will order that the National Guard, now under federal authority, not block the students from attending school, but now that they are to open the doors so they can go to school. And even through all the heckling and jeering and violence that they are going to face from the local community and even from their own classmates, the images that are given from this era show these 9 students very poised, calm, and confident in the midst of all the things that are going on, which would have been extremely difficult for a person just being 15 or 16 years old and having to go through all of this stuff in their life. So the Little Rock Nine in Little Rock, Arkansas, 9 African American students are to attend the local public school, and it requires the U.S. military to supervise and protect them every single day for an entire school year, getting escorted, getting brought to the school by police and the military. And even though you get into the school, doesn't mean that everything just ends right there. What about who you sit with at lunch? What about the grades your teachers are giving you? Do they call on you? Do you get textbooks? Are you sitting in the back of the classroom? Can you go to the school dances? Can you attend the sporting events in the stadium after school? So it was a very rough experience, but through the Little Rock Nine's example, many other African Americans and other students across the U.S. who would go into schools that would be desegregated had now someone to look up to and who set a standard for them. Little Rock Central High School is still a high school today that is functioning, and there's a little museum in it where visitors can go to learn more about this event. After the Little Rock Nine, next few years, in Greensboro, North Carolina, would be an event known as the Greensboro Sit-ins. There's a question not of public, but now of private facilities, a private restaurant. Can a person be denied access? If I am a store owner, can I refuse a person's service based off of the rules and the choosings that I have for my establishment? They want to be able to be served at this restaurant, and 4 African American college students are going to sit in the white-only section of the restaurant at a Woolworth's 5 and dime store until they are given service. It sparks a movement of other sit-ins across the Deep South in college towns and major cities. Eventually, there's going to be practices and training for many of these young high schoolers and college students because they have to learn to not retaliate or make any kind of backlash at people who, like in these photographs, are blowing smoke in their face, who are going to take their ties and turn them around, who might take a root beer or a malt or a shake and dump it on their heads, that they're going to face all kinds of intimidation and violence and threats. And through it all, these restaurants and facilities are going to be desegregated. At the same point, 1961, many people from colleges and high schools are going to spend a summer and desegregate the bus system. Now, Montgomery, Alabama had already desegregated, but just because them and eventually Supreme Court case say that separate facilities in the bus is illegal doesn't mean it was fully existing in the US. So many college students in the summer of 61 are going to take buses from northern cities that are headed towards southern cities. They are going to ride them integrated all the way down, but through it, they are going to face violence, rocks. Some of them are going to be burned. Sometimes those buses are going to get stopped and they're going to get attacked by a mob. And all these groups of people are going to take that risk of being sent to prison, having a criminal record, maybe being kicked out of college, being threatened by the authorities with a gun. And you're just 18 or 21 years old. People like Dr. King and others would partake in these movements. And ultimately, it would continue to further bring about the question of what is going on in America? How do we bring about equality? So, Little Rock 9, desegregating a school in Arkansas. Greensboro sit-ins, desegregating and allowing people to eat and be served anywhere they choose in restaurants. And then there's this event in the University of Mississippi in Oxford. James Meredith is the first African American to attend the university. He'd been attending a local college before that was African American. He wants to finish his degree at the University of Mississippi. The government uses the military to block him from attending the university. By this point, no longer Eisenhower, but Mr. Kennedy is president. And once again, the president will use his powers to call in the national military of the 101st Airborne to protect him and allow him to go to school. And what does that say again for the United States, who is supposed to be the shining symbol to the world, that it requires a military to get a student into a school that he has the full rights to attend? It would lead to riots on the college campus in which citizens would actually die. And at this time, the university's football team was undefeated and had the best record in the school's history. But because of these civil rights issues, they were not deemed the number one team in the country, as there was one other undefeated team, USC or Southern California, and the pollsters and the news writers gave them the national championship title instead of the University of Mississippi. Mississippi is a very traditional school. Its school's mascot was Old Reb, who was kind of this Colonel Sanders-like figure of a Confederate, that the university's nickname is the Rebels. It has a lot of deep ties to its Southern traditions and the Confederacy. Even in those days, up until the 80s, that the football team at the games, fans would be waving Confederate flags and using this chant that the South will rise again. Slowly, those kind of policies had to be changed. And over the time and as history has passed on, the university and the community within Mississippi has had to reconcile, reflect, and they have looked to move forward from its past history. Other changes are starting to take place in terms of African Americans in the world of television, that Melvin Goode would become the first Black television news reporter. And there's a lot of different organizations leading these movements. NAACP is dealing with the courts and helping people with attorneys and getting their cases heard. There are organizations like CORE, which organize the sit-ins at the restaurants. Dr. King and many church leaders are leading the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Ella Baker was a key figure within the civil rights movement, and she organizes SNCC, using a lot of those college and high school students to go around and knock on doors and get African Americans registered so they can use their full rights as citizens to vote. And then there are other groups like the Nation of Islam and Black Panther Party who have other visions and beliefs as to which methods would be more effective to bring about change that are somewhat opposite of Dr. King's nonviolent method. But those and the policies of the Black Panthers and Nation of Islam we will look at another time, later this week. Tomorrow we'll look into 1963. For some historians, that is the high point and the pinnacle of the civil rights movement. Thanks for watching.